Hello, I'm Ross Taylor, your host and guide for Sacred Sundays, a space to slow down, tune in, and return to what's sacred within and around you. I'm also a life coach for empaths and sensitive souls, walking alongside those who are ready to come home to who they actually are. These conversations are part of fulfilling that purpose, a collective exploration of what it means to live in connection with the sacred. Some weeks you'll hear a sound-based offering to open the space. Other times we'll simply begin in conversation. However it unfolds, this is an invitation into presence, connection, and the beauty of the unseen. If these conversations find you, please subscribe, rate, and share so others can find their way here. Pour a cup of tea, settle in, and let's begin. Today on Sacred Sundays, our guest is Tei Taiyarï. Tei is a heart-led student of simplicity, guided movement, and nurtured by nature. As a wanderer, and edge walker, he is passionate about supporting those on the fringes, souls exploring beyond conventional boundaries in search of deeper, wilder truths. As a counselor, ecotherapist, death doula, podcast host, wayfarer, and writer, he companions others through life's important thresholds, supporting them in reclaiming the wisdom of their wild hearts as they navigate transformative moments with deeper meaning, greater resilience, creativity, and grace. Welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here for this conversation. Yeah. Before we jump into the episode, I just need to insert a little message because we lost the first couple minutes of our conversation. What Tei shared was a really powerful reflection in regards to the fact that I had retrieved his bio from a previous podcast that he had been on. And I read that bio at the beginning, as you heard, and Tei found it fascinating to reflect on the fact that since the writing of that bio, he's changed so much to the extent that he really didn't feel identified with that bio anymore, which was a reflection of how much change he has been going through and how we shift as human beings as we grow and change. So his portion of speaking to that is missing, and what you're going to hear is my response to him. And then another section where it gets cut off, but he sort of finishes his thoughts after my response. And then we jump into the episode. So unfortunately, I can't possibly do it justice because what he said was so powerful and poetic. But I just wanted to make this note so that you understand why the beginning of the episode is disjointed. I'll blame it on Mercury retrograde because that is what we were in at the time of recording this. I hope you enjoy the episode. I love that because we were talking about how we've both been going through so much change in recent months, and I can identify with that as well. I mean, who I was 6 months ago is not who I am now because the universe has kind of shifted me into different flow and different way of being, and we're always changing. So it's cool to have that experience show up in this way.
And it's a delicate balance because we do need to hold the strength and vitality of who we are in any given moment. But there's also this liquidy, watery movement that's constantly scintillating, in our being. And that takes a deep sensitivity to really follow that movement in an honest, truthful way. And yeah, it's exciting. Anyway, so I just wanted to reflect on that for a moment. Thank you for that. I wanted to start this by offering something. So apart from that reflection, I would like to offer this poem that I brought.
Please do. Go ahead.
And yeah, I didn't write it. You may have heard of it at some point. The listeners probably have at some point. But I find this poem one that is timeless and that I can keep coming back to. And as I change and grow, I am able to access deeper layers of what this poem really is, what it speaks to in the heart and soul of humanity, and how it redirects us back to the heart of the world. So this is a poem titled Lost by David Wagoner, written in 1999. He says, "Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again. saying, "Here." No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you.
I have not heard that before. That's powerful. I love that. And as someone who spends a lot of time walking in nature and being with nature, I really resonate with the importance of that because we can walk the same path and see it the same way unless we slow down and see what we didn't see before.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And that idea at the end there, the forest knows where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I chose that poem because I'm seeing that it's becoming increasingly obvious to me that this innate biophobic orientation of modernity is destroying who we are as real humans, as true humans, and at the same rate destroying the wildness of the world that birthed us and allows for us to be who we are. And so that idea of like the forest knows where you are is like the knowing, the gnosis that life knows us. We're the children of Earth,
Mm-hmm.
humans. We're the youngest species. Life knows us. Life lives within us. It's like the way that a mother or a dear relative knows you in deep ways that you don't even know yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
especially so if you remain intimate with each other over time. And the thing is we can't get out of the intimacy that is innate within us and Earth because it
Mm-hmm.
lives deep in us. We rely on the food and the water and the air and all these things, you know? We cannot live, we cannot exist without it. Now, there's a veil within us that's heavy, this shroud where that innate intimacy is forgotten, it's shaded over, it's shadowed. And so, in that way, we are not intimate in a real rooted way. We don't have this biophilic propensity to, to love and exalt in the glory of being in deep kinship and relationship with all that's around us and sustains us. So the forest knows who we are, where we are. We just need to actually slow down, as you said, and still ourselves enough to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why.
And at the same time, I think this circles back to what you were saying before you read the poem. This idea of finding ourselves and being ourselves, which is an interesting thing to try and connect with because so
Hmm.
much of who we are is not what you just described after listening to the poem.
Hmm.
And the conditioning that we receive from this modern world and all of the layers of that. I mean, when I work with people one on one, it's like we're trying to relieve them of that conditioning. So this idea of the forest knowing who we are and we don't, it's fascinating because we really don't in so many ways because we've been told to be this way and that way and all the expectations of family, which is conditioning upon conditioning. And yet underneath it all, it's so simple,
Mm.
but it's so complicated to get back to that.
Mm. Well, because there's an ocean of grief between us
Mhm.
and that.
Right.
And we're completely grief illiterate in our society. We don't even know how to begin to orient toward this ocean of grief. And there is that deep knowing within that if we orient and move toward that oceanic churning mass of life force that is the grief that lives within, that's going to tear us apart,
Yeah.
necessarily so. But
Mhm.
we don't trust that because, well, we've been torn apart in different ways through our lives and we've felt how much of a lack there is of holding,
Hmm.
sociocultural, socio-spiritual holding, the lack is profound, absolutely profound. And so we're terrified, and we should
Hmm.
be, honestly. But that doesn't mean we don't try.
Right.
That's where we need to be courageous,
Hmm.
right? To be with heart, like, wow, reroute into the heart and say, I'm going to try because there's no other way. The only alternatives are to not live a real life. And when I look back over my decades of living, I can see how unreal things have been in
Hmm.
large part.
Yeah.
But wow, there's another aspect of the immensity of grief. So much unreality, so much
Hmm.
illusion, so much falsity, so much, you know, it hurts. It really hurts. That's the thing. When you slow down enough to be with the forest or to remember and reconnect with the wildness of the world and the myriad kin that are here, that's part of that process is recognizing that there's so much pain there. There's a lot of joy too, of
Hmm.
course.
Sure.
Wow. When you feel real connection with a landscape, it's one of the best experiences in the world because we need it. It's necessary. But it's also painful because you're in, let's say, a protected forest, right? Let's say it's some dozen hectares or something. It's like, wow, what a magical place. But just beyond that, there's clear cuts and developments and poison streams and all these things. Like, right?
Hmm.
So connecting more deeply with that protected area is also opening you up to more and more pain. And that's how it is within too, in our inner landscape. So I don't even know what I'm getting at here, but I'm just kind of trying to, I guess, speak honestly about whatever this is.
Hmm. I can relate to what you're saying. I recently had the gift of going to see the Chitwa giant, which is a protected cedar that's 1,500 years old. It's apparently the biggest cedar in Canada, and it's actually off of a forest road outside Lake Cowichan on the way to Port Alberni, kind of in between. It's kind of hard to find. It's not signed or anything. Actually,
Good.
it's a beautiful sight, and I could really feel that, like
Mm,
the timelessness of standing in front of this tree, this
mhm.
massive tree that, photos don't do it justice if you've never been there. And yet the contrast of how we're living outside of that, and that this beautiful tree that is protected is surrounded by clear cuts. And that is what we're doing to keep this culture moving forward and to have houses. And so the duality of that is certainly interesting to notice. And at the same time, I think about that experience and just how it touched me on the inside of, like, you can feel the presence of being known by that tree. You can feel the energy that is different in that spot because nothing has disturbed it other than nature itself.
Yeah. So one of my most beloved teachers in this life is Stephen Buhner. And he just died a few years ago, bless his soul. And something that he teaches, talks about, explores is that we are born into this world with empty places
Mm.
within us. And those empty places can only be filled by certain relationships, experiences, specifically relationships. And many of those empty places can only be filled by relationship with wildness.
Mm.
So when you say that 1,500-year-old cedar touched something inside, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's probably something empty within you that's just been waiting for decades to feel the living touch of an
Mhm.
elder of that enormity,
Yeah.
the wisdom of that elder. And the trippy thing is that many of our ancestors, most of them, when you go back through time, had regular contact with elders of that enormity. Not
Mhm.
necessarily trees that big, but
Sure.
beings and landscapes and ecosystems and mycelial mats and aspen groves and these things of that kind of ageless quality that you're describing, this deep earth elderhood. And systematically over the last few hundred, and especially the last 100 years, we've, as a global organism of humans, have destroyed
Hmm.
and killed off these elders and their wisdom. And so then those empty places within remain empty and hollow, and they echo. And the echoing makes us mad. It should. But lots of us don't know even what is happening there. It's like you don't know what you don't know
Hmm.
until you dive deep enough. And our society doesn't really support deep diving. In fact, it's like militarily the opposite, right? Get on your phone, get distracted, get on the news cycle, get distracted, get to work, make enough money to buy this thing and do this, da 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 da. You're not on time, you're late, da 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 da, right? Everything's like in opposition to depth. So I just wanted to share one thing here too. This is Brooke Medicine Eagle. And Brooke Medicine Eagle says this very powerful thing when he says, "My elders have said to me that the trees are the teachers of the law. And I have long contemplated what this means. As I grow less ignorant, it is obvious that the true university is the forest, where a regenerative, rich life is evident to all who will engage this world directly and openly."
And that reminds me, there was a podcast guest who shared with us that the trees are beginning to speak to us again,
Mm,
that we're in a time where the trees are starting to share their messages again. So that really speaks to me when you read that, because there
yeah,
is wisdom in the forest.
absolutely. And like the amount of community herbalists that are just like exploding out of the cracks and seams of the cemented, paved over, linearity of society. Like so many people I know right now are diving deep into herbalism. Why is that?
Mhm.
Did people like no people aren't like gathering and being like, "Hey, we're gonna do this? Yeah, we're gonna do this." It's like, no, there's something beckoning to us. There's something deep within the matrix, the living matrix of Earth, that's
Yeah.
beckoning humans to reconnect and to listen more deeply because there's no other way. I mean, the alternative is extinction.
Yeah. I want to circle back to, you mentioned the emptiness in us that we're trying to reconcile. And
Mhm.
to me, that emptiness relates directly to the grief. And so I want to come back to that piece of you talking about grief. And, what would you say to our listeners about stepping into that ocean of grief? How
Mm,
do we do that? Because as you shared that story about the forest, it's like I could feel that emptiness within me, and I see how I and others fill that emptiness with these things you mentioned. So how do we turn around and face the grief that, if I look at my own story in my own history, it was too much to face, at least at the time it was. And
mm.
so I was curious what you want to say about entering that ocean of grief as you described it.
Yeah. Well, we're not meant to do it alone. I'm reminded you're speaking of earlier how difficult it can be to to know who we are and figure out who we are and why we're here. And I was thinking in that moment as you're describing it, like, well, we're so human centric. Everything's about us. And so when I think about this ocean of grief, I think about how an essential aspect of it is to open ourselves to a larger context of connection and family making and friendship. And this isn't just with the human. This is with life. This is why I'm talking a lot about biophilia lately, this affinity to deepen and sweeten our love for life. And so, in approaching the oceanic mass of grief that lives within all of us in these times, we have to recognize that we need others. to be involved in it. Like I can dip my toes at the shore of that grief on my own. But there's an intelligent part of me that knows, like, don't dive in. You won't make it.
Mhm.
Now, if I have others with me at that shore and we're holding hands and we slowly walk out together, like, okay, well, we might make it. And even more so, if us holding our hands, walking out into that sea, we're also in deep connection and support with the landmass behind us and recognizing the life of that ocean that's receiving us to
Mhm.
churn us and change us and transform us to fill us with more life. So that's the other thing. Is like this grief, it's life. It's love, but it's so big that we can't do it alone. Just like we can't do life and love alone. Never meant to. Impossible. And in
Yeah.
fact, it's never happened ever, right? No matter how self consumed or human centric we've been at different moments in our lives, we're just full of all kinds of life forms
Mhm.
just in our physical body, within and on our skin. And the cells of our bodies are made up of mitochondria and there's other cells, like two beings coming together in symbiosis to create energy. So it's all this coming together life. And so grief is that too. So that's all I can say about it. You know, I'm not steeped in a cultural I don't have cultural roots. Like no one has ever shown me how to grieve,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Properly.
Yeah.
Right? Over the years, I've like come into contact with certain teachers and teachings, and I'm like patching together this raggedy tapestry of what it could possibly be and having like momentary experiences of what might be possible.
Mm.
But like, I don't know. And I would say that lots of us don't know. And so it's like the messy, courageous act of like attempting
Mm.
to learn. Right. And I'm reminded of how Charles Eisenstein talks about the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. Many people are talking about this these days. Stephen Jenkinson says, well, yeah, we know it's possible, but it's probably not going to happen in our lifetimes. So the way I take that is like, don't get hung up on the outcome. Don't get hung up on the arrival. You're not going to get to where you want to. That's not the point. And actually, if you're attached to that, it's going to get in the way of what's really here. So like maybe your children, maybe, or your grandchildren or great grandchildren, if creator allows humanity to go that far, maybe they will inherit what you imagine could be. And that's worthy enough of the effort. So my point is that it's this messy process of relearning, but we can't do it alone. So that's what I would say.
And what you said about not being able to do it alone reminds me of over the last 6, 7 years, I've done journeys with psilocybin. And you're making me think of some of the experiences that I've had that were so beautiful and so almost overwhelming to the point of like feeling like I'm going to die in the presence of this energy.
Mm,
And somehow in those journeys, I'm doing it alone. So that idea of, I mean, yes, I've done these journeys with other people and sitting together, but it's still you're doing it on your own when
mm,
you have that experience. So to walk into that ocean of grief with others, it seems very, very aligned because that in and of itself of that I'm not alone in this is huge. And I think about some of the death cafes that I've attended, just a few actually, and the conversations that happen. And again, that's an example of not doing it alone. To
mm.
actually talk about the thing that we fear so much
Yeah.
is such a beautiful experience. It's hard to describe when I say to someone, "Oh yeah, I went to this death cafe and we talked about this and that." And they're like, "What?" But we're so isolated in this culture. We live in individual boxes and we're in each other's aura even though we're disconnected from the person that lives beside us. It's wild to me. And so that concept of doing it with others in and of itself brings up a layer of grief and love, right? I love where you pointed with that. And I guess the other question I want to talk about is, and I think I read this somewhere on one of your websites, was the lack of connection to our culture, our heritage. Like we're not rooted in that. And you said that you're not. And I know I'm not. I've had some experiences where I've sort of dipped my toes in that, but I have no deep, rich connection to culture and no teachers, no elders, no lineage that I'm connected to. And that's part of it too. We're so disconnected from that piece. So who am I is such a broad question. And who am I underneath all the conditioning?
I would say that question is more difficult to answer than ever. You know, we're all cultural orphans, and we can't even fathom the immensity of the repercussions of that. You know, colonialism, it just absolutely horrifically devastated indigeneity of the earthly realm. It's just beyond painful to honestly recognize. And the thing to, I think, remember is everyone was colonized. Indigenous people were the ones who were massacred and tortured and eradicated. But that also happened to those who were, you know, descendants of those who were the colonizers. And in fact, the people who were doing the active colonization were also experiencing that within themselves. So whatever virus that was that propelled people to, you know, take up the colonizer archetype, wow, it just wrecked humanity and this earth. And so part of that wreckage is that so many of us literally don't have roots in the earth. I mean, just to sense into, real honestly, the fact that most people don't grow any of their own food, like it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And you know, you could chalk it up as like, oh, that's a win for modernity. Now I get more time for leisure. It's like, do you? People have less time for leisure than ever, you know? And who's to say growing your food for your family isn't leisure? I mean, sure, you work hard in some moments, but like, wow, what a gift. Greatest gift. And there you are actually working with roots. You're working with seeds. You're working with the transmission of knowledge that's connected to place, right? So just that simple fragment of the massive wreckage that we tend to not even grow our own food, right? And then you can just kind of like follow the threads of that into different aspects of our lives and recognize all these ways that we've lost touch with real rooted reality because we were all colonized. Our hearts and our minds, our roots and our cultures were taken from us, destroyed, in many cases lost forever. But there's like fragments and tatters. And so when we're asking ourselves today, who am I? Part of that is like searching for these fragments and then like picking them up and going like, whoa, how do I make sense of these? How do I fit them together in some kind of ragged outfit that I could like don, you know, on any day that I feel courageous enough and go like, okay, this is what I think it could be. Do you want to try with me?
And yet, so much of this, and I think you've already alluded to this, is in our DNA still. We remember. And I was part of a Tao study group for quite a while in Vernon. And there was this one piece where I don't even know how to describe it, but essentially what I saw was this 5,000-year-old plus tradition reflect what I would say is the medicine wheel. And the Tao has these Asian influences, and yet there's these elements of the medicine wheel that we see in indigenous cultures. So to me, it just spoke to, wow, it's like this is part of all of us. It's just not able to wake up again because of how we're living. And so when you come back to the trees knowing who we are, it's that. It's like it's in our DNA if we connect to it and allow it the space to wake up. And maybe that's what all of this relieving ourselves of our conditioning is about, is returning to that essence. Because at some point in every culture, we lived on the land, and now we're not. At least the majority of us are not.
Yeah, I mean, I would say lived with the land, right?
Right.
So even that language of lived on the land as if
Mhm.
as if you can be separate from it, right?
Yeah.
Right there in the language. And we take that. It's because our worldview, right? And I sense you're a good man that cares and is sensitive, right? And you do your
Hmm.
best to connect. But like there it is in our language.
Sure.
It's in our worldview. So the conditioning goes so deep, it's so strong, it's intense. I just wanted to say about the medicine wheel. I'm not surprised at all that you would find, and as far as I understand, you do find the medicine wheel by different names all
Hmm.
across the world.
Sure.
And the reason why is because it's the truth. That's it. It's in earth-centered spirituality, it's the truth because
Hmm.
it's experiential through the human experience of being a child of earth in the way that
Yeah.
we're able to perceive our unique capacities for perception and
Hmm.
experience. Like that's
Yeah.
what comes out of us in order
Yeah.
to navigate more wholesomely and to stay connected. So that I think is another just this like idea or term, earth-centered spirituality. I think is another important thread to consider in the
Hmm.
context of all that we're talking about, because many circles that I've orbited around over the years could be considered like spiritual circles. I don't really I don't even really use the word spiritual often, but it's coming through right now. So I'm just going with it. And in fact, I tend to like kind of back away from people who talk about spirituality in a direct way like that. Like I just want to be around people who I sense live with spirit. That's it. I don't want you to talk about it. Right? It's like, what is there to talk about? Right? In that way. So, but the reason why I'm saying it now is because so much of so-called spirituality these days in this kind of like new age, post new age spiritualism and the commodification of spiritualism and these things, it's so amiss. It's
Hmm.
so far from the rootedness that is our inheritance as human.
Hmm.
It's so concerned with ascension, ascending, rising, high vibes, this idea of like looking up and going up and out, right? Even that teaching that people talk about from Yeshua of the Bible, I'm in this earth, but not of this earth. Like that idea, which who knows if that dude said that, I don't know, but people take that on as like this, valiant cause. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. First and foremost, you're Earth. Like, there's no, the, I know people say like I'm a soul experiencing like a physical incarnation or whatever. Sure, like that's probably true on one level, but also I can touch you. You're made
Hmm.
of food. You're made of plants and animal flesh and minerals, and the waters through you like they flow down the watersheds into the ocean, and like you're Earth. So if your spirituality isn't centered in earth, then you're missing the assignment, in my opinion. And I don't usually take super strong opinions, but I'm down to like be strong with that one. You're
Hmm.
missing the assignment. You are an earthen being. And
Hmm.
I think that comes before everything because
Yeah.
it's the center of your experience here at this time.
And I think I read on your website that instead of ascending, we need to descend, and
Yeah.
we need to grow down into the earth in order to grow up. And
Yeah.
that really touched me, because I really believe a lot in shadow work and going into the depths of things. And it makes sense to what you just said. Like, if we're of the earth, then we need to go back to the earth.
Yeah, we need stronger roots and we need to tie our roots to other roots, as Sophie Strand says so beautifully. Yeah,
Mhm.
Carl Jung, I think I wrote there on my website, he says modern man doesn't find God because he doesn't look low enough, right? And it's so true. And it's
Yeah.
tragic, the consequences, truly tragic.
Yeah. And one of the things that it comes up in the conversations here. Well, there's two things, and I think I say it every time now. It's quite funny. The slowing down,
Mm,
and then the reorientation of like we're so focused. Like I think about God is up there, and or whatever I need is out here, but
mm,
it's actually an inside out thing. We need to reorient inside ourselves because that's where all of our answers are, and
mm,
that's why I love some of these modern systems like the gene keys that are reorienting to our inner world.
mm,
And I don't know if you're familiar with the gene keys. Richard Rudd tells this story about how we are like the dragonfly emerging right now. We are the nymph that has come up out of the water, and we're about to have this transformational experience. But the nymph under the water is like this predatory kind of creature that is pillaging and taking and destructing and all the things that are manifesting in our everyday world. And yet it emerges as this beautiful dragonfly, and it happens so quickly.
mm,
And so he says that we are the nymph that one day decides to come up the blade of grass and evolve into this beautiful dragonfly. And it can happen so quickly if we allow it.
mm,
And from that place, everything is very different. And
mm,
that's confirmed, actually. I've seen Richard Rudd with Pam Gregory, an astrologer, and Zach Bush, who is a pretty
mm,
prolific speaker. The three of them talking about how this shows up in each of their worlds and how it is reflected in all these different places. It's happening. We are part of this change, but it is of the earth. It is an earth based experience that we're evolving with, and coming back to that feels really important.
mm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I like that example. I have a lot of thoughts around it, trying to see which one matters most right now. Well, I'm thinking about like environment and context and how it shapes who we are. So, you know, I'm actually thinking about grasshoppers and locusts, and they're the same organisms. What happens is that the ecology of a place becomes so confining to a population of grasshoppers that they literally morphologically transform into locusts. Like,
Hmm.
not their descendants, an individual turns from a grasshopper into a locust when a certain environmental context puts enough pressure on them. And then what the locusts do is they swarm and they eat each other and they eat everything in their environment to the point where there's nothing left. And then most of them die off so that grasshoppers can then live in more harmony with that environment. And so I see humans like that right now. And the trippy thing is that we created our own environment that's turning us into these like mad, volatile, violent creatures. I don't
Right.
think that that's who we are deep down.
Yeah.
It's a part of it, but it's like the confines, like the kind of zoo that we've created for
Hmm.
ourselves. It has forced us into these like styles of behavior and
Yeah.
relating that are inherently destructive to Earth and ourselves. But now the thing with the locust example that's interesting is like, well, they go all out and then things come back into balance as all things do, right? Now the thing with humans though is that like our capacity for destruction is tremendous. So it's
Hmm.
like how far does it have to go before things come into balance? And that's a question that people have been asking for decades now,
Sure.
but it keeps going and ramping up. So it's like, whoa, we're going far, right? And so it's terrifying. But as the machine and the machinations of modernity continue to churn through the earth and like rape the earth of all that she gives us so abundantly, people like you and I can recognize it and feel it. And we do have choices. We have choices every moment, every day, every week, every year of our lives. And something that's been happening for me as part of this big change that we were chatting about a little bit before the conversation is that I'm becoming increasingly intolerant with my lack of integrity
Mm.
around what my deep values are. Like, I'll give one very simple example that I know all of us will resonate. Everyone listening, I produce way too much garbage. And the amount that I put into the living systems that sustain me to the amount that I take out and extract so that I can live the life I live is way out of balance. And I would say that probably everyone listening is in that same situation.
Sure.
So now for me, and probably for many listening, my deep values are not that. Like my deepest values when I touch down deep, deep within. I don't want to be out of balance like that. I don't want to be out of integrity like that. Just extracting more than I'm giving back to life. So that's one example. There's others too, but it's becoming increasingly intolerant of like just kind of pushing that knowing aside because I'm busy, because I have these things to do, because I have responsibilities.
Sure.
It's like, well, at what point? What point do I go, okay, enough is enough? And it's not just like a hard stop on everything, but like I can focus on one aspect of my life at least, like the
Mm.
garbage situation, go, okay, it's been decades of being like this. When I've done my best over time, recycling, not using unnecessary things, all that, not buying random bullshit, sure. But I'm still producing garbage weekly.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, can I really focus on that? And then what other aspects of my life can I just take some time to actually focus on and go, is this deeply connected to who I really want to be?
Hmm.
And if it isn't, and I'm courageous enough to be really honest with myself, then what the fuck am I going to do about that?
Hmm.
Am I going to do anything? Well, if I don't do anything, then am I going to just suffer forever because I'm
Hmm.
going against who I really am?
Yeah.
I think many of us are in that situation where we're consistently ignoring the deeper parts of who we are and who we want to be
Yeah.
because we're caught in this momentum of modernity and the machinations of it. And I know it's a huge force and it's difficult to face.
Hmm.
But like someone's got to. And people
Hmm.
are. People are, and we all are in our own ways. But like it's not enough usually
Hmm.
for who we really are deep down. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
And I'll reflect back to you an observation I had a couple of weeks ago driving to Victoria, which was the number of Amazon trucks that I saw that were
Yeah.
going the other way. I was shocked. I was like, oh my God. Like there must have been 40 or more. And that's the marked ones. Then there's all the trucks that are white that don't have markings on them. And it's like, how did we get here? How did we get that on a Saturday and now even on Sundays, all of this is happening? And think about all the packaging. It just goes so far.
So far.
So,
Yeah.
but we're in a culture that believes that that's the only way now, and it's the quick way, and it's the I can get something the next day. I don't have to leave my house. I don't need to go to the mall. And then you go to malls and they're empty. It's like anyway, not to go down that road deeply,
No,
but it's like
but
it's
it
such a
matters, man. It matters because
yeah.
we're not talking about it enough. No,
Hmm.
go down the road deeply. Talk about it
Yeah,
more. You don't need to be an asshole about it, like condemning.
totally.
Look, I totally get why it's happening. I participate too, but I need to be honest that it doesn't
Hmm.
feel right. It's
Yeah,
not rooted.
yeah.
Like like that it's painful. That the
Hmm.
amount of bullshit that I give my life force to
Yeah,
really hurts me deep down. And I turn away from that hurt. So we're talking about the grief. That's part of it.
exactly.
I
That's part
turn
of the ocean of
away
grief.
over and over and over again. And you do,
Hmm.
and you do. And we're all turning away from this
Yeah,
real rooted reality that we know deep down. And
yeah.
we're doing it every day of our lives. So it's like, but we want things to change too.
Hmm.
We want things to be different. We want things to be more wholesome. We
Yeah,
want to feel the love and we want to feel like we're a part of beloved community.
sure.
We want to feel healthy and vital. We want our children to thrive, so on
Hmm.
and so forth. But we make choices every day that are in direct opposition to that. So to be a true human in these times is to just like honestly recognize, to say, okay, I see that, and then go, I'm willing to feel it. I'm willing to talk about it and share about it. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
willing to make some change. But look, it's hard if I do it alone. Can we do it together?
Right. And you haven't really named it, but what I've felt, and I think is something that it showed up in a small way in my life, surprisingly, is that I'm now living in a small communal situation, whereas I was living alone before. And I think that is part of it, is that we need to return to living with each other and supporting each other. And when we do that, things change as well because we're not alone in that journey. And so there's an element that I think you've been kind of hinting to that is important. And it can look all sorts of ways, right? There can be small housing on land that there's many people living together and independently at the same time. But I think it
Well,
allows and shifts
yeah,
some of these things that we're talking about, cooking together, whatever that means. We're
right.
reducing our footprint and also easing how much time it takes. And I mean, that concept has been out there forever. Or you said, modernity is taking us down a different road.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, the Amazon delivery system becomes so much more irrelevant when you are living deeply connected to people in a way where you rely on each other. And then I think this is also one of the troubles of these times is that our relationships have also become in many ways transactional
Hmm.
and convenient and usually relying on like fun times or
Right.
like I hang out with you because I like you and because I want to have a good time. But if
Hmm.
that's not happening, then like, ooh, I don't know, maybe I'll take a rain check.
Sure.
Right? It's very rare for people today to be so connected to others that I don't live today without you. Like me and my children don't survive without your effort and vice versa.
Yeah.
But that was humanity forever.
Right.
Like almost all of our ancestors relied on
Hmm.
each other to that depth. That was real relationship.
Right. And
You
our
know?
nervous systems are wired for that kind of connection and responding to things that don't match that.
Yeah. So now we just well, we get the veins of Amazon to send us all these things to try and fill those empty spaces within.
Mm.
Like I said earlier, that can only be filled by the wildness of the world.
Totally.
And that's in our other human kin. And what I'm saying is it's wild. It's a wild thing to rely on someone for your life
Hmm.
and for them to rely on you.
Yeah.
So,
So this feels like the perfect place to pause our conversation. I think there's lots for the listeners to digest.
yeah, sure.
Even though I would love to ask more questions and go down different paths, that would be awesome. But this feels like the perfect place to stop. And I always close with the same question, and I'll throw it out for you. But what is one simple way someone could connect with the sacred today?
Listen, like deeply listen and be willing to be changed by what you
Mhm.
hear.
I love that. Thank you. So Tay, thank you for this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the energy that you bring and the richness to the way that you see the world. And I think there's just so much story and pieces that people can relate to. And so I appreciate that journey that we took and very grateful for getting to spend this time with you today.
Yeah, man, me too. Thanks for having me. I hope I wasn't like a downer. I want people to know that I just really care about life and love.
Mhm.
And I want you all to feel like you're living a real life because I want
Mhm.
to feel that. I think we
Yeah.
all do. And
Yeah.
I want to feel like I love life deeply and that life loves me. I want to
Mhm.
know that deep down. I want my children to know that. I want us all to know that. I want to
Mhm.
look into each other's eyes and really see that, oh, this person loves life. Not in the way of like, oh, I'm always happy. I love life. This is a joy.
Mhm.
No, no,
Sure.
I want you to be in that deep, like horrific, beautiful, painful, glorious, ecstatic love for life to where you're
Mhm.
just so present for the mystery of what's unfolding. So that's really what it is. And I'll just say here, Ross, that you're inspiring me. I have had a podcast project for a couple of years, but because of the changes of things in my life the last half a year, it's been on a pause. I'm
Mhm.
using this as like Tinder for the fuel to reignite my project. So I do want to
Amazing.
folks to check that out. It's called Wild Heart Revival. There's 50 episodes up there, and we talk about all sorts of things, but you can get a sense of what I'm into through this conversation. And I'll also say this too, if anyone's on Salt Spring Island and you want to work in an earth-centered counseling context, and if you're interested in what I call ecotherapeutics, reach out. That's what I'm offering here on Salt Spring Island. And I also have virtual clients as well. It's different, but it's also very meaningful as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how people can connect with me. And also just reach out. Like, I love having meaningful conversations. The amount of times I've just met with people, random people through a video chat, just to say like, hey, what's up? Many. And so I really love that. So I'm open to connection is what I'm saying, and collaboration.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes. And I just have to say something that's really funny. You said you have 50 episodes on your podcast. And when your episode, this conversation, gets published, it will be episode 50 as well.
Well, okay. So this
is
yes. Yeah. I take that meaningfully. Yeah.
Yeah. I got chills when you said that. It's like, oh, interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Makes sense.
Cool. Thank you again for this time, and look forward to where our paths cross again in the future. Thank you for joining us on Sacred Sundays. I hope something in today's offering spoke to your spirit, stirred something true, or simply gave you a moment to breathe. If this conversation resonated, please subscribe, rate, or share. It truly helps this work reach the people who are meant to find it. If you'd like to step inside my world a little further, I host a free live practice 3 mornings a week called Start With You. Just 20 minutes on Zoom to return to your own energy. Everything you need can be found at the link in the show notes. Until next time, may your day be slow and sacred.